If there's one thing you could say to Nintendo right now, what would it be?
Go fuck yourself. Seriously, Nintendo, I, from the bottom of my heart, hope that you go fuck yourself.
Perfect. I'm using that for the
Yeah.
intro. Thank you.
Yeah.
The biggest hot button topic in the Smash scene nowadays isn't centered in Melee, nor is it centered in Ultimate. Rather, it's about a mod of a game that's over 10 years old. Project Plus is an exciting fast-paced modification of the Wii version of Smash Brawl, and it has an extremely dedicated community. However, to even just enjoy playing the game together, they face some monumental hurdles, including from top dog Nintendo. While the issues they faced would usually spell the death of many other communities, the people at scene has still persisted. This is the tale of a community that refuses to let its game die. This is the story of Project Plus, the game Nintendo tried to kill. If we're going to be making a video on Project Plus, it's impossible to ignore what happened to its predecessor, Project M. So, let's go back. All the way back to 2008. When Brawl came out on the Nintendo Wii, it was a huge commercial success, yet when it came to competitive play, it had a fair amount of flaws. For one, the game moved at a comparatively slower pace than its predecessor, Melee. The game also removed a lot of mechanics that defined competitive play in previous games like wave dashing, and added some weird mechanics as well like tripping. Not to mention the balancing issues that accompanied the game's release. Now, I'm not telling you that you should hate Brawl or that it's a bad game. I mean, I literally made a 30-minute video about people trying to speedrun in single player mode. However, when you compare it to how Melee played competitively, it was a pretty jarring switch. So, what were the solutions? Well, people would either persist with competitive Brawl or they'd go back to playing Melee, or they'd just stop playing altogether. However, a few devoted modders took the challenge of crafting Brawl to play how they wanted it to. The result was Project M. Initially, Project M, or PM for short, was started in order to redesign one of the game's characters, Falco, to fit more with his melee playstyle. Very quickly though, the project turned into something much bigger. The dev team turned their attention to other characters and the overall game itself. They made the gameplay similar to Melee, meaning that it was quicker paced and reintroduced mechanics like wave dashing. The first demo was released in 2011 and quickly caught fire amongst the scene.
One day while I was just looking through Smash videos of Sonic, I found Mewtwo King vs. Withrobe back in PM 2.5, and that changed everything. I was like, this is the game that I want to play.
Melee and Brawl players were actually both playing PM.
Yeah.
It was like this unified front, like they were competing against each other, they were enjoying the game. People really liked the game.
It really genuinely felt like the most close and like tight-knit the Smash community has ever been, because at that time when the Smash Dock came out, there was so many people playing, but there wasn't nearly as much like politics or Nintendo drama. We were just playing games. We just liked our games, we played them. It was sick.
The game received bountiful attention and a huge cult following. It was downloaded over 3 million times, whilst also amassing a player base of over 500,000 people. With regular updates and huge community approval, things were going great. Up until... Out of nowhere, the PM development team took to their website to announce that they were stopping PM development immediately. The news was devastating for many involved in the scene.
There are some days everybody remembers for the rest of their life. I really didn't think that, December 1st, 2015 was going to be one of those days.
I cried. I did it. It meant a lot. Even though I wasn't going to tournaments all that often at that point, it still meant so much to me, and it was heartbreaking.
As a development team member, I mean, I cried. Like, that was like my child. Especially since I was like 15 at the time when that happened. That was one of the more traumatic experiences in my life, I would say.
The way that I read it, and a lot of other people read it this way too in that moment, I read it and I thought like this was it. Project M is going to die.
In the wake of this news, people were quick to point fingers at likely villain Nintendo for pulling the plug on PM. In fact, at the beginning of 2015, one major tournament series, Apex, announced that they had pulled PM from their lineup after partnering with Nintendo. However, the PMDT kept things shut and refused to blame Nintendo for shutting things down. Even to this day, the real reasons behind PM's shutdown are relatively murky. It was only recently that the Smash community came to find out how Nintendo and other parties like Twitch were involved in shutting PM down.
The fact that PM was sort of like stifled and like silently chokehold and like that stuff was very good for Nintendo.
It almost makes Twitch sound worse than Nintendo was. Like Nintendo did such a good job distancing themselves from all the mess.
Nevertheless, despite so many lingering questions, the PM scene just had to move on. Just as a quick side note, this few-minute summary of PM can't do justice to how much of a huge deal this game was in its heyday. In fact, there's actually a documentary about PM in the works, and you can find updates about it on Twitter. Link is also in the description. So, we're in 2016, and it sort of felt like Project M was at this crossroads. Through the hard work of TOs and community members, major tournaments were still happening and spawned some legendary moments.
2016 PM was still really big because it was the year right after development shut down, and in a way it was a good and bad thing for the game. It was the first time in PM's history where we had a meta that we got to keep for 3 or 4 years or something. Olympus was the end of the circuit they ran in 2016, and everything leading up until that was huge.
But while you had people holding on, knowing that the game wasn't going to be updated anymore turned a lot of people away.
After 2016 it kind of took a dive. 2017 was still kind of active. 2018, it just started to slowly dwindle down. Because even before COVID, a lot of locals were dying out. People weren't playing the game as much.
You really would walk in there sometimes and think, wow, how the mighty have fallen. Because this weekly that used to have 30, 25 people every week, now we're getting 10, maybe 15 on a good day.
Nevertheless, while things seemed dire, Project M was still there, even with less numbers than its peak. PM was starting to settle, and it seemed like everyone was fine playing version 3.6 for the foreseeable future. Well, not everybody. This is Wafflin. He's a European PM member, and in late 2018, he helped spearhead an effort to bring a much needed update to the game. That update was Project N, which later turned into Project Plus.
And so the exact moment that everything came to be was when Jay first made a post on Reddit about Project M 4.0. He said the game is dying, etc. We need something new. We need changes, whatever. I basically felt okay. I mean, why not just try it again and see if it works? And then I just created the server and thought of a stupid name and thought okay, well, Project M, it's not really Project M because it's a different development team. That's why I went with Project N at first, because it was just the next letter in the alphabet. And then eventually people asked, okay, why Project N? What's the N for? And we had the silly idea that the N was for not Project M. That was what the N stands for. It's just that's the stupidest name ever. And eventually people said, I don't know if it was the development team or if it was people in the public Discord, just other players said that the name was kind of stupid. And I think we made a poll, and eventually Project Plus won.
It was basically just hey, let's make a new Project M. And then a bunch of people started joining the Discord, and we didn't really know if it was going to happen or not. And we just kind of kept talking, and then eventually we made roles for players who were going to do balance changes, and it just kind of slowly turned into us being oh, we actually made a dev team, and we're doing this now, I guess.
By the time we had a separate developer Discord, and the developer was not in the main Discord, and we had very many top players and also modders from the original development team partially. There were a few people, I don't know if they want to be named. When they joined the team, I was okay, this is pretty legit now.
Now, in the aftermath of PM's shutdown in late 2015, there were a bunch of spin-offs and fan-made modifications of the game. Project Plus wasn't new in that sense, but perhaps what made it so different was the sheer amount of people involved. This wasn't an official update, but a lot of people were undeniably excited. Yet, quite a few remained skeptical of the project for various reasons.
Reception was overall pretty good. There was always, and there still is, some specific pushback against Project Plus. People said that the 3.6 balance was good enough, and that further balance could only be done by the original developer or team, and that's not around anymore, so we should just let the meta develop. With Melee, the tier list always has changed, even in the past few years, even though the game has been the same for so many years. And that was kind of the argument of people who didn't like the idea of Project Plus.
There was just people who legitimately just did not want balance changes. I'm not going to like name players, but there were definitely people who did not feel comfortable with like essentially just a group of like fans, quote unquote, balancing the game. Like it was like mostly top players, like good people from regions, stuff like that. But there's still, you know, those people that are like, oh, I don't trust this guy balancing my character. They're not the official PM dev team. We should just play the official PM build. And if you go on our website or go on our Discord, we will always tell you like you are free to play 3.6. It is your decision what to run at your tournaments or what video game you want to play. We can't tell you what to do. We are simply making a game and got permission to do it.
Despite some of the pushback, the P+ dev team persevered, and in April 2019, version 1.0b was released. Over the coming months, there would be more updates and fine-tuning to the game. People started to warm up to it, and in turn, P+ became the spiritual successor to Project Zen.
P+, I think, was the right move. I think P+ was important. It gave a very stagnant scene something to look forward to. And as the game came out and people saw P+, this new thing that everybody's playing, it actually did raise attendance. Not today. Heyday we were used to back 2013, 14, 15. But, something that resembles growth in the scene, which is something we haven't seen in a very long time.
Finally, the game had a fresh breath of air blown into it, but yet again came another roadblock. As everyone knows, March 2020 was when COVID-19 brought the whole planet to a standstill, and for Smash particularly, it changed the dynamic immensely. Every tournament moved to an online format, and for games like Ultimate that relied on Nintendo's delay-based netcode, things were really rough. For Project Plus though, it actually gave the scene a new opportunity, especially with the game officially releasing just a week into lockdown.
COVID was kind of both a blessing and a curse. I definitely would have been better without it, but we released P+ 2.0 like right around the same time. Like our big release, like completely new aesthetics, add costumes, add features, add Knuckles, and right around that time is when all the tournaments shut down.
I don't know. It was a blessing and a curse. We got to get the game out. It came out during a time where everybody was at home, so like the initial release, like everybody was talking about it. All the Melee and Ultimate players, were trying it, were talking about it.
Like that trailer got 700,000 views. It got a lot of eyes on it and brought a lot of new people into the community. People that either like can't travel or like don't have a scene near them, being able to compete and figure out the game from that point of view is kind of a blessing for a lot of the newer people, because they basically got a whole year head start before locals and nationals and stuff.
Nobody's got anything to do. I got nothing better to do. I thought, why not do something online? I was at home anyway. When I was first running Wombat Wednesday, we were getting some decent, not great, but like it's really good community crossover.
Project Plus's growth during lockdown was actually indirectly aided by Nintendo. After the big house announced that they would no longer be running an online Melee tournament after being contacted by Nintendo, people flocked to other Smash games in defiance, including Project Plus.
Nintendo shut down the big house online. And I think pretty much the entire community started being sick of Nintendo shit. The growth in the online scene has never been better than that winter of 2020. We had these tournaments that were barely hitting double digits, maybe like sometimes we would get 24 people. Now every week we're getting 30, we're getting 40, we're growing. There was a point where we started hitting 50. It was just this big explosion. Everybody wanted in on PM, at least on the East Coast, and because of net play, they were able to do it.
The P+ community, they really don't give up easy, because if a company single-handedly trying to shut down your game at every turn doesn't stop you, then just like a little bit of like net play on a daily basis isn't going to stop you. Like somehow the P+ community grew in COVID. It's insane.
Of course though, despite the opportunities that lockdown afforded P+, being limited to just net play, especially on delay-based netcode for over a year, wasn't ideal.
It was a bad thing because nobody was going to tournaments, so for the first year of P+ being out with 2.0, or at least the first 8 months, it's cool, we get to release the game, but now we don't get to play it for the next 9, 10, 11, whatever it was, right? Like it took basically a year, I think, for us to really get offline majors back.
Nothing could compare to having in-person tournaments back, and in 2021, the Project Plus scene finally had their chance to be in the spotlight again, with the inclusion of P Plus in major tournaments like Riptide.
I was pumped when I heard they had PM there. I was so excited. So having an excuse to go see all my PM friends and go to the Kalahari and have a good time, that's what being a PM player is about. At this point, we're a family. I just want to go see my friends and hang out.
Riptide was looking really good. We had like 385 entrants or something. We definitely capped very, very quickly, which was really cool to see.
The entrant cap is reached in a few hours, which is unheard of for the PM tournament. They announce that they're going to extend the cap for all games again. PM's cap gets doubled. You may have heard that Riptide reached its cap for everything in 10 minutes. Project Plus reached its cap in 3. It's huge. It's massive. We have never had like our scene just so unanimously ready for anything. We are just absolutely fiending to play this game.
You could not register for Riptide unless you were like on the Smash GG page, mashing the F5 key the first second that registration opened, because it was the first major back. And when I saw they had PM and that had to happen, I had like 20 alarms set on my phone to be on the Smash GG page when registration opened up, and I was mashing F5 so goddamn hard, and I'm so glad I got a spot.
And everyone's like, oh, we're coming back, Riptide's announced. P Plus community was kind of popping off.
The excitement was palpable as it was finally time for P Plus to re-explode into popularity. Things were on the up, but once again, on August 27th, Riptide announced that they were forced to remove Project Plus from the event after being contacted by Nintendo of America. Not only was the news devastating, it only came 2 weeks before the event was set to take place. Understandably, people were pissed.
We were completely blindsided by what happened at Riptide.
I didn't expect it at all. I'm not like 100% surprised that like this never could have happened, but nothing like that had happened in a long time. So it was definitely a shock, and I was definitely very upset about it.
Everyone was so mad, and they're like annoyed. Annoyed's the better word. We're like, again with this stuff.
I don't know. I was like almost like blocking it out of my head at first because I was like, I'm used to this stuff. Like I get it. Like it sucks. And then like I just kind of kept ignoring it for a day or two, and then eventually it hit me, and I'm like, dude, this really fucking sucks. This is actually so shit.
It really did, in my opinion, feel like P Plus was on a really good upswing. And then to culminate at like showing up at live events like Riptide being the first one and that first domino, to have that taken away and then all of these other events following suit, it's just like really disappointing to see.
I'm used to it, but I'm not, but I'm used to it, but I'm not. It's always going to be sad. And as a PM player in the back of your head, you always have to accept that there's a good chance that could just happen. It's unfortunate, but you just move on.
But I saw several people that were like, this feels like when the PMDT shut down. This feels like when we got to Paragon and we were told like, hey, you can't be on Twitch suddenly. Like those first domino effects falling.
There is no way Nintendo did not know that this tournament was happening until 2 weeks before it happened. This was a deliberate, calculated, surgically precise assault on the PM community. 2 weeks, you probably can't even cancel your flight. You're going to struggle canceling your hotel room. You already requested off of work. If they really just cared about not having PM, they would have done it back in May when they announced this game and it reached its entrant cap twice in a week.
Riptide unfortunately wasn't the only one to go. Soon after that cancellation, Mainstage and Lowtide City announced that they were to pull Project Plus from their tournaments out of fear of similar retribution from Nintendo. Despite all these months of planning and anticipation, the rug once again got pulled out from under P+. Many in the scene rightfully felt that they were robbed, but some weren't ready to give up just yet. Headed by Tio Melee Sadpost, work quickly began on finding a way to host an underground P+ event in less than 2 weeks. That event was Undertow.
At that point, I was like, I've already spent so much money just to go play P+. I'm not going to let it die. And I figured that's going to resonate with other people. And I said on Twitter, on Heartswap TV, if you're going to Riptide and you still want to play P+, DM me. Immediately, I got like 100 plus DMs, and I'm like, never mind, just join this Discord. And it grew to like 300 people, and I said, all right, let's start planning. If anyone wants to volunteer, let me know. We just looked everywhere for venues, and we found like 4. I called 2 of them, and they were like, we don't do gaming stuff. And I'm like, we don't need to do gaming stuff. Just let us use a little room with some tables. And then we found another one, and they were busy, and then we found this 4th one. And it looked really bad, but we had no other option, so we rented it out. So in about 2 weeks, we organized the Smash GG, we organized the volunteers and the pool captains, we organized the commentary schedule and assigned who the streamer is, and then we bought the venue and raised money for a prize pool.
Despite having less than 2 weeks to find a venue, find enough setups, and not even being allowed to advertise publicly, Undertow was still happening.
We're gonna have this event run, regardless if it's at that venue, at a different venue, in hotel rooms if we need to. It was gonna run some way, shape, or form.
Riptide was gonna have 400 entrants for Project Plus. We, Undertow, had around 192 entrants for singles and 50 entrants for teams. And I think we would have broke 300 easily if we didn't have to advertise in secret. We had so many people being like, I would have known, if I would have known, I would have gone. And I'm like, yeah, so would have a lot of people.
I did definitely still have people messaging me like, hey, can I get a bracket? And I was like, nope, sorry. I cannot put you in. We have to run this in one day and with 200 people and a limited amount of setups.
192 entrants. That is the biggest event we've had in years. We haven't had anything close to that in a long time. Nintendo tried to kill us, and they can't. Try, you won't succeed.
Shin and other P+ TOs found a way to make it work, and on the same weekend as Riptide and only a couple miles away from Riptide's venue, P+ had its major tournament.
I was thinking to myself, this is gonna work, this is happening. There's no problems. There's no problems at all. Like any of the roadblocks that I imagined, it was a miracle event, really.
It went pretty much as well as we could have possibly asked for. I definitely am proud of how that ran.
Me playing this game for almost a decade, this is one of the most iconic, most memorable times I've ever had with the game at all.
Talking to flesh and blood instead of like digital voices, I don't know, it just felt really nice.
I get to finally play my favorite game offline after like a year and a half of not touching it, and oh my god, when they say offline is something else, it is so nice. Nothing will beat this. This is home.
It didn't matter what your opinion was then. That day, you were a P+ player, and you were just, we were all like, we were all family in that building right there.
Me and Rosie and Motobug and AJ, we all like pulled through and just hosted a really sick event, and Vaporeon too.
Doctor far away, but still making it back. Pills to spare. There he is, the grab. Fair, the Doctor wins! Undertow! Oh no. 3-1. Good shit. Good shit. So unbelievably happy for him as he is beside himself. Cannot believe it. Please give him a round of applause. Excellent showing. Truly an amazing showing as they lift him in the air.
So, now the dust has settled, and despite all the odds, Undertow was a huge success, and more importantly, shows that this game still has life in it. Sure, the circumstances aren't perfect, but there's a ton of these shadow majors and events that are still going to happen.
I don't know how it keeps happening, but tournaments get canceled by Nintendo, and people just happen to have been planning tournaments for P+ right next to the venue. It's just really weird coincidences, but hopefully it keeps happening. I had no idea Riptide was happening, and I just hosted Undertow next to it, and it just worked out, Wink, wink.
If there's one thing you could say to Nintendo right now, what would it be?
Go fuck yourself.
You don't have to do that. Why do you do that? You leave us be.
Just leave us alone. It doesn't affect your bottom line, and stop being an Orwellian 1984 company that polices what people do with your products. That's how the free market works, plus ratio.
So if there's one thing I could say to Nintendo right now and have their undivided attention, it would be this. How dare you? We're not in it for the money. We are not trying to profit off of this game. We're not trying to profit off of this scene. We are just doing something we love. You guys have to come in and bully us. Like, who do you think you are? Who do you think got Nintendo to where it is? Because I know right now it's the fans that you are spitting on. That's the long and short of what I want to tell them. I think if the opportunity actually happened, there'd probably be a lot more swear words in there.
Actually, the number one thing they could do is just leave the Smash community alone. They can do anything else they want, literally ever interact with the Smash community ever again.
Now we have people actually caring about P+ because of what Nintendo is doing to us. But this is the first time now that we are all rallied together.
I don't think the P+ community is shrinking. It's just going to keep growing, and Nintendo keeps doing stuff that inversely makes us grow instead of shrink, which is pretty funny. People are just entering P+ out of spite now, which is awesome.
While the future remains somewhat uncertain, the Project Plus scene certainly will go down without a fight.